Hey there, guys. All right, today we are back with some more history matters. This time we are talking about why was FDR allowed to serve 4 terms, a short animated documentary. Before we dive in, make sure you go and check out the links in the description box below. I would love you to join the Discord and follow me over at Twitch. Now, the simple answer for this is quite simply there was no law until after FDR's presidency that restricted someone from running and winning the presidency more than twice. It was just a tradition established by George Washington from the very beginning to simply serve 2 terms, um, and then be done with it. FDR, for whatever reason, was like, I'm built different, and proceeded to win 4 presidencies in a row, but then he died in his 4th one. And perhaps that has established a standard in the U.S. where I'm curious if what, because I don't know too much about the Senate or House of Representatives pre our time period, but I'm curious if the U.S. has always been plagued with career politicians within the Senate and House of Representatives. I feel like the answer is yes, that even during the 1800s we had congressmen staying for longer than they should. But today we see it especially, I feel like, where these people are not retiring, even though we live in a world where they are totally capable of retiring. Like I don't want to work after I'm like 70. What the fuck is wrong? You are legitimately, if someone actually wants to be in a position of like wants to work after the age of 70, they are then, to me, not fit to make laws, because to me that questions your mental capacity. You got to be fucking batshit insane to want to legitimately work, especially work in a toxic environment that is Congress. Like you're not only a public figure, which brings about its own stressors and scrutiny, but you're working with people like from my side of the aisle. The people on the other side of the aisle want to fucking bring this place into a fascist state. Like, I'd be out of there. I'd be out of there. I I wouldn't be able to stand it after the age of 70. No. Uh I wouldn't even be able to stand it now. I'd be throwing hands at certain people. I'd be punching. I'd be bringing this back to the 1800s. I'd be bawling. I'd be brawling in the fucking Congress, just like it's the 1800s, man. Throwing the. I'd bring a cane too to fucking whack someone. Anyways, that was a tangent. Let's dive in.
It's well known that a US president can only serve 2 terms. But as most of you watching will know, there is one very
Not you, Dave. You know nothing. That's rude to Dave.
notable exception to this. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who served 4 terms between 1933 and 1945, which was when he took the important constitutional decision to die. But given that every president before and after him had only served a maximum of 2 terms, how did the American people react to him doing this, and did anybody try to stop him? Now, the 2 term limit presidents abided by originated with George Washington, who, towards the end of his 2nd term, realised that he hated his job and so opted not to run again. He did this not because he believed that there should be a 2 term limit, but that leaders should be willing to hand over power without fuss. And later, when it became clear that John Adams wasn't going to win a second
Which I think is George Washington has a lot of problems. For one, he was a slave owner, right? We can't forget that. But that is incredible foresight on his, like, it is very, like, that is such a commendable thing. Um that it really shows just how flawed humans are. This man who was a fucking slave owner trash um also had the incredible foresight to give up power before he died, because he was conscious of the fact that if he died while in office, um, that would set a dangerous precedent. And so he was like, I'm going to give up the power now, um, so that no one can, like, there was essentially no way of arguing, right, what Washington believed in terms of how power should be handled. and how the transition of power, especially in the United States, should be handled, right? Because he resigned when he did, he essentially guaranteed a very essential tradition within the United States, which was then threatened January 6th of 2020,
term, some of Washington's supporters asked for him to run for a
2021.
third. He said no because he was too busy being happily retired, and many saw this as Washington condemning third terms. But this was just convention, not law. So did any other presidents try to run for a third term? Well, yes, quite a few of them. The first president to openly flirt with breaking the convention was Ulysses S. Grant. However, his party refused to nominate him. After this, Grover Cleveland was offered a third.
Oh man, I feel like maybe we'd be in a better place if his party had actually let him go through. Because Ulysses S. Grant was fucking tough on the KKK. His successor was not, if I'm remembering things correctly. Damn, maybe we'd be in a much better world if Ulysses was allowed to be the first to break convention. God damn it.
Third run in 1896 by his party, but he was well aware that everybody hated him at this point and so he declined.
Hold on. Words.
In
I want to read the
1896 by his
newspaper.
party,
I really love reading
but he was well aware
newspapers.
that everybody.
More like Grover Cleveland. Grovey Boy leaves office very hated. Today marks the beginning of the end of Grover Cleveland's second stint as president of these United States. His second term has been a series of unmitigated disasters. His hatred of silver is a particular issue, nuts that people genuinely cared about this sort of thing enough to protest it. That has damaged the well-being of American laborers. Rumors abound that Cleveland was offered a chance to run for a third term as president, presumably in which to continue his policies of not annexing Hawaii, caving to British demands in South America, and having a dumb face. Gilded Age to end, new, slightly worse age to begin. The Gilded Age, which was a thing that lasted up until now, is over. Despite nobody calling the last 20 years the Gilded Age, you'll all miss it. Unless you're not a white dude, but if you're reading this paper, let's be real, that's you. Oh man. Instead, this time of economic growth will be replaced by a time of yet more economic growth, but people will complain about things that are not fair. Women will want rights? What? No way. Spain won't want to be warred. Corrupt politicians won't want you to concern yourself with their dealings, that sort of thing. More in the next 20 years. Man gets cold, will probably die. A Kansas man known locally as Sniffly Joe has reportedly caught a cold. Due to this being the 19th century and effective medicine being all but a fairy tale, he'll probably kick the bucket. He will leave behind 14 children and a wife who's open to finding new love with a man who preferably has a functioning immune system and won't do petty things like die. Yeah. The cost of the Patriotic Times here is like $1. That sounds expensive for 1896. I feel like it'd be like 2 pennies.
He hated him at this point and so he declined. So the first president with any genuine hope of being re-elected to a third term was none other than Theodore Roosevelt. He was offered a third term by his party, but he refused, wanting to respect Washington's precedent. However, when he realised his successor sucked, he tried to win the Republican nomination again, but they stayed with William Taft. As such, new party, the Bull Moose Party. He ran against Taft, split the vote, and managed a respectable second place to Woodrow Wilson. Wilson had hoped for a third term, but his...
God, fuck Wilson. Genuine, like, oh, I love Teddy Roosevelt. I respect the man. He had, of course, like all people that run for president, had problems. But, like, between Wilson and Roosevelt, Roosevelt is so much better.
party refused to nominate him, meaning that up until FDR, the convention stayed intact. So what exactly changed with Roosevelt? Well, with World War II raging in Europe, FDR believed that his opponent and professional stupid name-haver Wendell Willkie would leave Britain to its fate, and also undo his New Deal policies. What made this time different was that his party agreed. Now, as you can guess, a third run was quite contentious. The Republican Party accused Roosevelt of being a dictator in waiting and that a third term was un-American. Broadly though, most Americans were much more concerned with navigating through the tumultuous times, and ultimately Roosevelt was seen as more trustworthy in economic and foreign policy matters than Willkie, which is why he won the 1940 election handily. He ran for and won a fourth term, which shocked precisely 0 people, but he died shortly afterwards. And by 1947, there were many politicians in both parties who were concerned that long-running presidents could lead to national stagnancy. This political concern is why the 22nd Amendment was put.
No one can serve as president for more than 2 terms unless they use the vice president loophole thing where they serve for 2 terms as president and as vice president for a new guy who then quits or dies, and so the VP can become president again. This does not apply to Truman.
Forward. This banned presidents from serving for more than 2 terms. The 22nd Amendment had one exception. Harry Truman. This was because he was already president and so he was allowed to run again if he wanted. He tried, but his unpopularity soon made it clear that his party would have preferred to elect literally anybody else, and so he stood down, thereby ending the last attempt at there ever being a 3-term president. I hope you enjoyed this episode with the
And that was why FDR was allowed to serve 4 terms. Short animated documentary. This was well made. This is, of course, one of their newer videos. So they managed to fill in a bunch of stuff in such a short amount of time that constantly impresses me. I've got nothing to add here at the end. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.